Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to a VHS review of ECW Barely Legal. This was ECW's first ever pay-per-view, which took place back on April 13th, 1997, 24 years ago this month. The pay-per-view opened up with Joey Styles in a ring, welcoming the crowd and those watching at home on pay-per-view, and there was an issue with the microphone, which the crowd couldn't hear him too well initially, but Joey's running down the three-way matchup that was happening where the winner would get to challenge Raven for the heavyweight title in the same night, and also mentioned the match between Sabu against Taz as the big grudge match. And as that happened, he's interrupted by the Dudley Boys, Bubba Ray and Devon, who were accompanied the ring by Sign Guy Dudley and Joel Gertner. Devon takes the microphone and starts running down the crowd, and the microphone gets better, but then they go to the usual ECW intro with the theme for those watching at home on pay-per-view. Then we come back to the ring, and Joel Gertner's doing his usual ring announcing shtick for the Dudley Boys. As out come their opponents and challengers, the Eliminators, the late John Kronus and Perry Saturn, for this matchup to kick off the pay-per-view. The Dudley Boys won the tag team challenge from the Eliminators a month earlier at the ECW arena, which is also where this pay-per-view was held. Just as the bell rings, Sign Guy Dudley hits both Eliminators from behind with his handheld sign. Saturn and Kronus retaliate by hitting him with their finisher, Total Elimination. Then Devon and Bubba attack. Devon hits Saturn with a cool reverse DDT. Bubba then takes Kronus, puts his head between his legs, and screams out, "Motherfucker!" before powerbombing Kronus, and Devon hit a top rope headbutt. So Bubba Ray Dudley has the distinction of being the very first wrestler to use profanity on an ECW pay-per-view. I don't think there was actually any tags made at all. It seemed like all four men were either in the ring or out on the floor at the same time. Dudley's trying to go for their 3D Dudley Death Drop finisher, but Saturn broke it up. Dudley Eliminators hit some great double team offense with their martial arts backgrounds. Saturn hit a moonsault to the Dudleys out on the floor. Saturn hit a triple jump Saturn salt on one of them. Kronus hit his, they call the Hurricane Kronus. It was like a cartwheel backflip out to the floor. Bubba Ray hit the old boss man slam on Saturn at one point, I believe. Kronus and Saturn hit stereo twisting top rope splashes on the Dudley Boys. Saturn hits his super elbow drop from the top rope. Kronus hit his 450 splash. I'm wondering if they actually ended the match sooner because they ended up hitting Bubba Ray Dudley with Total Elimination and pinned him to win the belts back. Bubba Ray turned out he injured his ankle in this matchup. As the Eliminators celebrating the victory, Joel Gertner comes in the ring and the crowd's chanting "fuck him up," and Gertner declares that the fans were too stupid to see that the Dudleys were still tag team champions by a score of 86-83, so according to Gertner, it was close. But the Eliminators made him pay for that right away by giving him Total Elimination. Next up, we go to a promo with the Sandman, one of the three participants of the three-way dance that night, and they spliced in footage of him in action, and the Sandman declared himself the beer-drinkingest, cane cigarette smokingest, cane swingingest kick-ass son of a bitch in the ECW. And he said Terry Funk and Big Stevie Cool, we know is Stevie Richards, he says, "You guys want to get extreme?" And Sandman, we go back to the pro, he says, I'll show you extreme. And Sandman proceeds to hit himself in the head with his own Singapore cane, and then Sandman ends the promo by saying, "Let's dance." We then see Joey Styles where he's positioned at the commentary to commentate the show from. I don't know if it's called the Eagle's Ledge or the Eagle's Nest or whatever that lofty perch is in the ECW arena. Styles said the next match was set to be Lance Storm against No Gimmicks Needed Chris Candido. Unfortunately, Candido had a bicep injury, which put his right arm in a sling and was unable to compete on the card, but Candido's in the ring doing pretty much cutting a heel promo say he helped to start ECW and said he was going to get involved even though he can't wrestle. Out comes Lance Storm, who was scheduled to face Candido for this show. They shook hands left-handed due to Candido's right arm being in a sling due to his torn bicep. Or was it a pulled bicep? And out comes Candido's replacement, Rob Van Dam. RVD and Storm really turned it up for this show. And at one point early in the match, Van Dam hit a top rope somersault planche out to the floor. Storm was thrown to the corner. He did a cool jump from the mat to the top rope and hit a springboard back elbow on Van Dam. Van Dam crotches Storm on the top rope and tried to do a jump kick from the second rope, but he slipped it and it wound up elbowing Storm in the chest, which prompted the first "You fucked up" chant of the night by the crowd. Storm, a chair was eventually brought into the match. At one point, Van Dam hits a moonsault off the guardrail onto Storm. As I said, a chair was brought into play. Storm hits Van Dam with a wicked sit-out powerbomb. I think it was on that chair. I'm not sure if Van Dam landed on the chair or not. Van Dam hit the frog splash before it was a 5-star frog splash. Storm hit Van Dam in the head twice with the chair, and the crowd booed. I don't know if they were booing because the fact that they were hoping he'd hit harder with the chair, or if he was or because it was they felt a weak chair shot, or because it's been such an athletic contest up until that point. Van Dam eventually gets to his feet, hits Storm with the Van Daminator, which was the spin kicking the chair into his face, and then did a standing moonsault and pinned Storm to get the victory. After the match, Storm's looking for shake hands. Van Dam gets the microphone and he thanks Storm for the match, but he says, "I'm not out here to get your respect. I'm out here for the people's respect," and basically cut a scathing promo that he was being used as a second-line wrestler for someone who was injured. And it was kind of pretty much the evolution of, at that point, of what would later end up as Mr. Monday Night. So, in a sense, Rob Van Dam got lucky. Had Candido not gotten injured, Van Dam probably wouldn't have been on the show, or at least not in a match. Then we go to a vignette of the second of three participants of the three-way match, and it's none other than the hardcore legend, Terry Funk. And it's pretty much a video of Funk visiting the grave of his father, Dory Funk Sr., who was also a wrestler. And he's buried, I believe he's buried they say he was buried in the Texas Panhandle. I'm not sure which part of Texas that is. I don't know if it's the Funk's hometown of Amarillo or not. But Terry ended the promo or vignette saying, his wife and kids were going to be at the pay-per-view. And he says, if I could beat Stevie Richards and Sandman in a three-way match, I can get to Raven and beat him for the heavyweight title. I got to do it one step at a time. Then Joey Styles announces that next up was something a little different. It was a 6-man international tag team matchup featuring the competitors of Michinoku Pro Wrestling, based in Japan. I'm not sure if the promotion exists today, where it was a combination of lucha libre and Japanese-style wrestling. On one side, we had Taka Michinoku, Dick Togo, and Men's Teo, a.k.a. Terry Boy. And the three of them were sporting Blue World Order t-shirts as they came to the ring. And their opponents were the Great Sasuke, Gran Hamada, and Masato Yakashiji. Yakashiji substituted for Gran Naniwa, who I believe he was injured and couldn't make the show, and Naniwa eventually passed on years later. A lot of great triple team offense from both trios here. At one point, the trio of Taka, Togo, and Teo, try saying that 3 times fast, folks. They had this interesting heelish spot where Taka and Teo held an arm while Togo, he jumped up where his knees were on Sasuke's back, and he's flexing his guns, and Taka then gave a sight for the bird watchers. Another cool triple team spot they did and this was a nice sequence. Teo catapults Yakashiji. Togo hit a lariato, and then Taka hit a smooth knee drop off the top rope. But the crowd is really won over by all 6 of these men. Of course, a lot of high flying. At one point, Sasuke did a moonsault out to the floor and ended up in the front row, right by where Pitbull #1 Gary Wolf was sitting. At one point, Hamada and Teo were in the ring chopping each other, and that ended when Hamada gave Teo a headbutt. And that was like the fastest I've ever seen anyone go down after selling a headbutt. Later in the match, Hamada tried a Hurricane Rana on Teo, but Teo countered it with a super inverted atomic drop from the top rope. Man, it was so much to keep up with. The fans were chanting Power Ranger at Yakashiji due to his attire. Unfortunately, he just didn't have a mask to go with it. Sasuke and Taka are alone in the ring at one point. Taka hits his bread and butter, the Michinoku Driver. I love that move so much, but people refer to it as a sit-down slam. Taka attempted a pinfall after that, but Yakashiji prevented that from happening. Who else could I think of here in this match? It was so much. Taka, at one point in the match, Taka hits Yakashiji with a sick brain buster. Oh, man. I mean, I think these 6 men really stole the show looking back on this match. But Sasuke eventually hits a nice roundhouse kick to Taka's head. He hits a beautiful moonsault. Taka kicks out at 2. Sasuke nails Taka with a crucifix powerbomb. Almost similar to the Razor's Edge that Scott Razor Ramon Hall was known for. And then Sasuke Tiger suplex Taka with a bridge and pinned him to win the match for his team. And after the match was over, Hamada and Togo get into are duking it out, and until Hamada nails Togo puts it into it by giving Togo a headbutt. So the trio Sasuke, Hamada, and Yakashiji were victorious over Michinoku, Togo, and Teo. Saying all their names was a fucking mouthful. Then we go to the third and final participant of the 3-way dance, and that's Big Stevie Cool, a.k.a. Stevie Richards. He talks about that he had been Raven's lackey in the past, and Richards was like looking in the mirror all that time as he like moved the hair away from his face, and you see the blue guy, who we know is the Blue Meanie, coming out, putting on his best Razor Ramon impression, saying, Terry Funk, Sandman, are you ready to dance? Stevie leads. And then up next was another title match, as we saw the franchise, Shane Douglas with the head cheerleader Francine and a riot squad, and basically, I don't know if they were actual police officers in wearing helmets and carrying baton nightsticks. And Douglas was set to defend the World Television title against Pitbull #2. This rivalry actually started the previous summer, where Douglas, I forgot how, had broken the neck of Pitbull 1, Gary Wolf, and Douglas, I understand, had white hot heat for this. Like, the fans really felt for Gary, and there was one fan, I understand, there were fans who tried to kill Douglas, and he had to be snuck in and out of buildings, I understand, unless I'm mistaken. But en route, also, Francine had turned on the Pitbulls and aligned herself with Douglas en route to Shane winning the World Television Championship. Months later, during a match between Douglas and Pitbull 2, Wolf came into the ring with a surgically implanted halo, and in one of the scariest moments of the ECW or even wrestling history, Douglas grabbed Wolf by that halo and was shaking him back and forth before throwing him down on the mat. And then in early 1997, a masked man began hounding Douglas, saying he was trying to change ECW by screwing with the franchise. Many were speculating that it was Ravishing Rick Rude under the mask. So the stipulation was, if Douglas wins the match, the masked man would have to unmask. Pitbull 2 hits the ring after Douglas did a promo. And there's like a lot of power moves. At one point, he's putting Douglas in a front face lock, or commonly known as the front chancery. And wow. a lot of slow moments in this one. Douglas at one point had 2 in a camel clutch, and he sees Gary Wolf. He says, "This is you, Gary Wolf." And basically, at one point, Douglas counters a powerbomb by 2 with a Hurricane Rana. There's a lot of brawling, and so much went on in this, but I apologize to both Douglas and to the memory of Pitbull number 2, because this match was so slow. It seemed to go too long. At one point, Douglas was thrown to the corner. He jumps to the second rope. He tries for a cross, jumps backward for a cross body, but 2 catches him, walks over to the ropes, and does what I call the Scott Hall Slam, or as Bradshaw called it, Last Call, over the ropes, and Douglas went crashing through the timekeeper's table. Eventually, Gary Wolf jumps out of his seat and over the rail and attacks Douglas, only for the Riot Squad to grab Gary and pull him away from the ringside. And as that's happening, someone in the crowd saying, "Bullshit! Leave him alone!" I wouldn't be surprised if that was none other than John Hat Guy Bailey. For those who don't know, he was the one guy in the front row at ECW shows, practically the same seat, same side of the room, opposite the camera, almost every show they had. After Gary was pulled away from the ring, Pitbull 2, he brought in a loose piece of guardrail from under the ring. Douglas lifted 2 up, tried to crotch him on the guardrail, but one of 2's feet bumped into the guardrail, ruining the spot. But made up for it when they went back to the floor. Douglas crotched 2 on the guardrail set up around the ring. At this point, Douglas, he's using, he took pieces of that broken timekeeper's table, but 2 kept kicking out of that. I think Douglas used the bell, 2 kept kicking out of that. And every time he kept kicking out, Joey Styles frantically kept saying, "No!" He said, "This is it, it's over, to it, no!" Eventually, Douglas tries to pull a chain out of his boot, but 2 stops him, gives him a pump handle slam. 2 pulls the chain out of Shane's boot, wraps it around his fist, knocks him down. Chris Candido comes up to the apron. He's knocked down by 2. And then Francine tries coming in the ring. 2 runs at her before she steps back to the floor. And then eventually 2 was hitting the ropes. Douglas caught him with the belly-to-belly suplex and pinned him to retain the television championship. So after all that, it came down to a wrestling move. So then the Masked Man comes out wearing a Simply Ravishing robe. Well, it says Simply Ravishing on the back of the robe. And he kisses Francine to the point where she's fainting and he's hip swiveling. Then Douglas attacks the Masked Man from behind the TV title belt. But one of the Riot Squad members comes in the ring, takes his helmet off. It was none other than Ravishing Rick Rude, who hits Douglas in the gut with his baton nightstick and then socks him in the jaw. The Masked Man does take the mask off. It's none other than primetime Brian Lee, who chokeslams Douglas. And apparently Brian Lee had left the triple threat because Rude showed him the money, as Joey Styles said. Brian Lee, for those who don't know, he was the imposter Undertaker that Ted DiBiase managed in 1994, and years later he returned to the WWF as a member of the Disciples of Apocalypse, which was him, the late Bryan Adams, and Brian Lee's real-life brothers, identical twins Ron and Don Harris. Okay, so from there we see a backstage promo with Raven, talking about that 10% of the fans came to see him win. Then we see a promo from Taz with manager Bill Alfonso. And Taz talks about he's choked out everyone that's been put in front of him. And you see spliced footage of him choking out Bam Bam Bigelow, who passed away in 2007. UFC fighter Polar Bear Paul Varlins, I believe he passed away this year. Too Cold Scorpio, Rob Van Dam, and Chris Jericho. Then we go to our next matchup, which ring announcer Bob Artiste said it was billed as the Grudge match of the century. Match of the century. As Taz with manager Bill Alfonso and Team Taz. Team Taz consisted of Taz's students, Dastardly Danny Doring, Amish Roadkill. Not sure if Taz's own cousin Chris Chetty was out there with them. And also, I noticed out there with him was John Kersey, who later started his own promotion, the New York Wrestling Connection in Long Island. And Taz's scheduled opponent, Sabu, hit the ring without having his music played. And after the introductions were done by Bob Ortiz, the match was on. They started out slapping each other. It turned to fists. Taz went for the Taz mission early, but Sabu had a nice counter to avoid getting put in the move or the hold. Taz used a lot of ground mat rat tactics to stretch Sabu. Sabu took it to the floor, and at one point Taz was in the crowd. Sabu leaped off like a triple jump dive onto Taz, who was already in the crowd. Taz clotheslined Sabu over the rail, away from the crowd. Taz, early on, he did like a body scissors, and he's doing these cross-face forearms, which apparently broke Sabu's nose because there was bloodshed, but it wasn't coming from Sabu's forehead. At one point, Sabu tried to tornado DDT Taz off the apron through a table, but Taz pushed Sabu off, and Sabu crashed through the table. Eventually, back in the ring, Sabu hits an exploder suplex, or as Taz called it, a T-bone suplex. But Taz, and at that point, Sabu mocked Taz by doing that pose where Taz folds his arms. And Sabu turns around and points at the ceiling, almost gets clotheslined by Taz. Sabu puts Taz in the Taz mission, but Taz countered it with a side suplex. Taz hit an arm Tazplex, hit a T-bone Tazplex, and then he puts Sabu in the Taz mission, and Sabu's arm dropped 3 times, and Taz was declared the winner. Taz takes the microphone, and he says that, that he respects Sabu and offered to shake his hand. And then they shook hands. Sabu raised Taz's hands, and then they hugged. But then all of a sudden, Rob Van Dam comes out, forearms Taz from behind, and Sabu's looking at RVD like as if to say, what the heck you doing ruining this great moment? And then Taz grabs Van Dam. He's like to give him the hard way Tazplex, but Sabu punches Taz, and then both he and Van Dam put the boots to Taz, and they do a number on him. Van Dam made a few corkscrew leg drops. Sabu put Taz through another timekeeper's table, and then Sabu put Taz in the Taz mission on the floor, and Bill Alfonso's looking at them as if he's like going to fight them by himself. Alfonso takes off the orange shirt, and he's got a Team Taz shirt on, but he takes off the Team Taz shirt, and he's got a Sabu shirt on, and raised Sabu and Van Dam's hands, and Bill Alfonso gets the microphone and says, Taz, I taught you everything I knew. You cost me a lot of money. I had my money bet on Sabu. And Taz tried to get up, and he threw a chair into the ring. Van Dam cut a promo saying, we're all winners here tonight, and he says, all you promoters want me, get a hold of my man Fonzie. I love to work Mondays. And after the 3 of them left the ring together, Alfonso looks in the camera and he says, Taz, I wasted a whole year on you. I own you, Taz. And at one point, couldn't hear what the fan said, but Alfonso turned his head and he says, fuck you, asshole. And then they show some replays of some of the action in that matchup. Then Joey Styles takes the microphone and introduces his guest commentator for the next matchup, the innovator of violence, Tommy Dreamer, along with Beulah McGillicuddy. And then it was time for the big 3-way matchup, as we saw Big Stevie Cool, a.k.a. Stevie Richards, accompanied by his fellow BWO members, the Blue Guy, the Blue Meanie, Thomas the Inchworm Rodman, and 7-Eleven. Now, 7-Eleven was a parody of Six of the New World Order. Six, of course, his real name is Sean Waltman, but 7-Eleven was portrayed by Rob Feinstein, the owner and founder of RF Video. Out comes the Sandman with his long entrance, and out came hardcore legend Terry Funk. And these 3 had a very good matchup, and that was another show stealer. They were chopping each other at first. They were doing some double teaming on each other. At one point, Funk hit Richards with like 4 or 5 Hangman's neck breakers, while Sandman left the ring and came back out and brought a ladder into play, and they did a lot of seesaw action on the ladder, to the point where I think like it accidentally the ladder accidentally went into the crowd, or it might have hit Sandman in the head on the floor. Eventually, Funk gets the ladder. He airplane spins the ladder, knocking both Richards and Sandman down. Funk, the ladder was positioned in the corner, and Funk did a moonsault off the ladder with one of his boots, hit Richards in the gut. There was just so much that went on in this damn match. Eventually, Sandman left the ring again, and he came back to the ring, and I don't know how he timed this. He picked, it was a very heavy metal item, and at first I thought it was a beer keg when I first watched this long ago, but he threw it, and it was such timing, because not only did it was actually a metal garbage can wrapped in steel, and it hit Funk right in the head, letting out a "oh" from the crowd. Man, I don't know how the heck he timed that, or how they could have practiced that that day. Eventually, Funk and Sandman both pinned Richards, eliminating him from the match. Sandman and Funk start going at it, and Sandman goes out to the floor, and prior to that 6-man Michinoku Pro tag team match, the fans threw streamers towards the ring, and some of them were put underneath the ring, and they got tangled up in some barbed wire that Sandman brought into play, and Sandman, unfortunately, Funk and Sandman are going at it. Funk used a hockey tactic, pulled Sandman's shirt over his head, and started throwing punches. And also, Funk took that barbed wire with streamers and all attached, and was whipping Sandman's back with it. And then eventually, Sandman got the barbed wire, wrapped it around himself. He started charging Funk, and at one point, Stevie Richards was up on the apron, and Sandman charged Richards while he was on the apron. And Funk eventually took the metal trash can. Stevie Richards came back, hit a super kick, and then Funk climbed to the top rope, did a moonsault, not the best looking moonsault, onto the Sandman, and pinned him to win the 3-way matchup. But then all of a sudden, out comes the heavyweight champion Raven to defend this championship. Poor Terry Funk got no time to rest, and Raven hits the ring, and he starts pummeling Funk, who's already been battered from Sandman and Richards. And at one point, Raven does his drop toe hold spot onto the chair, and Funk begins to bleed. One of the doctors comes out, and he's trying to convince Funk, do you want to continue? Are you all right? Raven called people out, and most of them had their backs to the camera, so I couldn't see who they were. But one of them was Reggie Bennett, a women's wrestler who had gone to Japan, made a name for herself in Japan. She gives Funk one of the worst looking power bombs I've ever seen. And all apologies to Reggie Bennett. And those other members of Raven's Nest, who I couldn't see their faces because they had their backs to the camera. They were stacking tables right below where Joey Styles, Tommy Dreamer, and Beulah were sitting at. And Raven takes the microphone. He tells Dreamer, I'm going to put Funk through 3 tables. I'm going to end his comeback, his career. It's going to be right in front of your feet. At that point, Dreamer takes his headset off, stands up, and he's daring Raven to come up there and fight him. But then all of a sudden, a Big Dick Dudley hits Dreamer in the head with a garbage can. Big Dick Dudley, I don't know why he hadn't been seen in ECW for some time, because Joey Styles was saying, oh, he's out of jail. So I don't know if he really went to jail, or that was just some type of angle to put him out of the picture for a while. Big Dick attempted to chokeslam Dreamer off that ledge onto those 3 tables, but Dreamer kicked Big Dick in the dick, and then Dreamer was going to chokeslam Big Dick, but instead of literally just pushed him off, and Big Dick Dudley went crashing through those 3 tables below the commentary area. Dreamer then has the garbage can. He's going to the other guys, and Dreamer throws the garbage can in the ring. Raven catches it. Raven throws it at Dreamer. Dreamer hits the ring. He eventually hits Raven with a count as a hip toss into a DDT. And also at that point, ECW founder Todd Gordon, he's running around the ring, and I'll get back to that shortly. But right after Dreamer gives Raven the DDT, Funk gets on top. Referee John Finnegan goes to make the count. But the bell rings, but John Finnegan says, no, it was only 2. Funk then takes Raven down with a small package, gets the 3 count, pins him to win the heavyweight championship, and Funk and Dreamer end the pay-per-view celebrating in the crowd. Now, as far as Todd Gordon goes, what I understand is, I don't know if they had a generator outside the ECW arena, but my understanding that Gordon was running out there because to try to make sure the match ends before the pay-per-view, before they lose the feed to all the people watching on pay-per-view. And, I guess it was just in the nick of time, so to speak. I mean, Todd Gordon later described himself running around like a bunny rabbit with its head chopped off or something, trying to convince him, come on, end the match. We're gonna lose the power, and who knows what they would have had. Because the funny thing is, on this VHS release that I have, even though Funk and Dreamer were in the crowd and the screen faded to black, you could still hear the fans chanting Terry, Terry, and then they're chanting ECW. So I was wondering about that. So eventually I found that out years later. But nonetheless, Barely Legal was a darn kick-ass show. Great way for ECW to kick off their time on pay-per-view. Dreamer, it was a great show, considering the fact Tommy Dreamer didn't wrestle. Chris Candido was injured. Rest his soul. I mean, a lot of stuff went down, and, a lot of stuff did go down. That was, I guess the genesis of them being on pay-per-view. But definitely, they really proved they belonged on pay-per-view with that very show. So if you want more classic pay-per-view reviews, let me know, folks. I'll be definitely glad to deliver. And let me know what you think of this one, folks.